Okay, so we spoke about the idea of does God really care or not? And then we said, is God a part of the world or is beyond the world? And that led us to the whole conversation, what is the world of Atzilus? And we discussed the whole argument between Maimonides and yeah, which comes more from the philosophical perspective to the Rizal, I'm sorry, the Maharal of Prague that represents the more Kabbalistic perspective, and we quoted the piece of Patach Eliyahu that we say every Friday afternoon, or the Sephardic Jews say it before every mincha.
We're talking about the biblical.
Oh, and we said that in order to understand this, so I'm sorry, so we quoted the Patach Eliyahu, very good. So we quoted the Patach Eliyahu, and the Patach Eliyahu, what does it say over there about the 10 Sfirot? Antu, you are the one, the Apikat Asar Tikunin, you're the one that brought forth 10 Tikunin. When you say brought forth, what does that usually mean?
Created.
That you created. It's not you. It's, again, we won't want to use the word creation because it's not a creation yet. It's an emanation, but still, you brought forth. So we see clearly that from a Kabbalistic point of view, Atzilus is, so to say, an emanation from God, whereas by the philosopher, the word Atzilut is more focused on the word Etzel, closeness to God.
Is it related to the word etzchem?
Etzlachem.
Like essence?
No, that's Etzem.
Etzem.
And that's with the ayin, with the aleph.
Okay.
It's very unfortunate that your teachers are Ashkenazic. That's why we have a Yemenite teacher too. You'll never make it. You'll never. You would never have this confusion because one is Etzel and one is. What is the word you? And one is Etzem. Etzel and Etzem is two different. Yeah, but Ashkenazim don't know how to pronounce the difference. So we said that the way to understand this is let's bring up a bigger question of more a question of more practical question of child rearing. And we said, should I care? Shouldn't I care? We discussed the advantages of it and disadvantages of both sides.
And we talked about the relationship between what Hashem is, as He wants to be within us in the relationship, but He wants to stay above us.
So that's going to be the next stage. So we finally came up that the solution to the issue with being, should I care or shouldn't I care, is we said the formula that Alter Rebbe is going to use over here is going to be be within, stay above. And that led us to a whole conversation that the Rebbe in the letters always tells other people. If you have an issue with your child, get other people to talk to your child, because it's so much easier for them to receive from other people. Why? Because there's family enmeshment. You're emotionally involved, and what in order for your child to be able to receive, you can't be emotionally enmeshed. And therefore, if you really want to be successful with your child and you don't want to run to the neighbor every time you want to tell him to go to sleep or something, the real way of doing this is to not to really care, but to choose to care. In other words, like this, that's not my source of pride, that's not my source of happiness. You are not who I depend my happiness on. Because if a child feels that his father's happiness is based on him, so then, again, how did that girl say? My mother is going to college through me. That's a very annoying feeling. But once we learn how to detach, not to really care, but to choose to care, that is the only way it could work. And not only the only way it could work, it is also the greatest love possible. Because if it's all about me and I don't love you, I love myself, and therefore I want to be the father of a child that knows Tanya by heart. I want to be able to tell everyone, oh, that my son married the daughter of that person. But I don't see the child for who they are. Well, the case is different. If I don't really care, I choose to care, that's a whole other issue. Now, guys, what we're going to discuss now is one of the deepest things in the Tanya. And some people might come and say, oh, Rebbe Levinger, you're a bit crazy. When you taught this in the first level of Chassidus, something is wrong with you. But I think that we have a very good understanding of what's going on over here. So let's just do another tiny short recap, and let's see how we're going to put it into the idea of Atzilus. Again, the philosopher, when he talks about the spheres are God, right? I look at the world, I see the one created the eye, definitely sees. I'm sorry, the one that creates the eye definitely sees. The one that implanted the ear can definitely hear. That's God. Then obviously we have to say God can't be composite. So we have to make all the spheres back into one, and then say that God doesn't have that sphere, God is that sphere. Right? The Kabbalists, on the other hand, say, no way, you're not calling God any sphere whatsoever. Why don't you call God any sphere whatsoever? Why? Because that's giving him a title. That's dragging him into the world. God is beyond the world. And therefore all the spheres are merely an emanation of God. Comes Chassidus, make sure you're buckled in, shouldn't fall out of the chair. Comes Chassidus, and Chassidus says the following. Both are right. The Rambam and the Maral are right. God is beyond the spheres and created the spheres. But after creating them, he unites himself with them. God is beyond the spheres. God had to put himself through a whole descending chain, a whole process, in order to become a creator of the world as we know it. But once God created those spheres, God unites himself with those spheres. He becomes one with them. What do you mean he becomes one with them? He chooses to become it. Be within, stay above. God is beyond it, but he chooses to be in it. Now comes really the bomb that the Alter Rebbe lays. Once we understand this concept that God is beyond the spheres and becomes one with the spheres, we could say even more than the Rambam. The Rambam only says that God is what? The knowledge, the known, and the knower. Chassidus comes and says that God is also one with all the other spheres. God is one with the Bina. God is a loving God. Whoa, Rabbi, loving God? God is loving? How could God be loving? God is beyond him. Right? God is beyond the sphere of love. But God, after creating the sphere of love, he unites himself with the sphere of love. And therefore, you could call him the loving God. Therefore, you could call him the mighty God. Because God chose to unite himself with all these attributes and become one with them. So, in other words, which side does the Alter Rebbe take? Which side do you think he's saying? The Maral of Prague or the Maimonides? Did I go too quick? Did I lose you?
Both, no?
He takes both. But once he combined them two, he could be even more extreme than the Rambam himself. Because the Rambam only said that what? That God is the wisdom. We're saying God is also the Bina, also the Chesed, also the Gevura, also the Tiferes, also the Netzach, also the Hod, also Yesod, also Malchus. That's, by the way, one of the brilliant things that the Alter Rebbe sometimes does. He does it in Halacha too. He combines. The Alter Rebbe has unbelievable divine wisdom. He combines two opposites, but when you combine them two, the result is not a compromise. it's even something more extreme than both of them. Because according to the Maral, God is one with which Sphira? None! According to the Rambam, with the Chachma. But when you combine Maral and Rambam, God is what? God is one with all the spheres. Isn't that awesome? So could you call God the loving God?
Yeah.
Could you say God is the wisdom?
Yes.
Sure. But so you're limiting God? No. Because God is above. God chose to unite himself with it. Now let's go back to our question. Does God really care? Yes or no?
Yes.
He chose.
Really cares? If he really cares, he's not a God. If he really cares, if I made a bracha on this, or if I read Krishma, or with whom I'm talking, or what I'm looking, what I'm thinking, he's not a God. He really cares?
But he chooses to care.
Exactly. He doesn't really care, doesn't get affected by it, but he chose to get affected by it. He says, Meir, or Boaz, or David, or Ezra, or Nehemiah, or Daniel.
I hear a lot of atheists, their arguments.
A second.
Okay.
All of you, God says, I chose to care because I love you. It doesn't matter. And I chose to need you. That's where this whole argument with Rabbi Manis Friedman comes in. Rabbi Manis Friedman says that one of the major things in Chassidus, that in other schools of Torah teaching, they'll say, oh, God doesn't need you. God doesn't need you. God gave you Torah mitzvahs for yourself. So he says, what do you mean? For sure, God wants to dwell and plays out in the world, and he needs you, and he needs your davening, he needs your tefillin. He does need you. But because he wants to make his message very easy to accept, so he just says that part. The real full message is God doesn't. If God needs you, he's not a God. But he doesn't go into the philosophy of it. So now we're learning Chassidus more in depth about your benching. God chooses to care about putting on tefillin, and that's guys. Please don't want to say it because this is very important. But I want to explain this. A lot of people comes to religion because they have all these preconceived notions and they've never learned Chassidus well. They say, well, God really cares. God really cares about this minute thing, which hech should I eat? Is it really kosher or not? Where's their mistake? Their mistake is that they think of God as someone that really cares. If he really cares, so you really care about things, and you don't care about the small things. And then the way to challenge those people. So God doesn't care about your mitzvah. What does he care about? Shachris. Shachris also in front of God, it's nothing. So he would really care if I would meditate for 23 hours straight. Sit like this, like this, and go for 23 hours. That is going to impress God. Where's the mistake? God is beyond the world. If God gets impressed, God is beyond creation. For God, Chochmah Atzilus and a pebble on the floor is exactly on the same level. A lot of people think that God is spiritual. One of the biggest mistakes there is. God is not spiritual. God created spirituality. In God's eyes, spirituality and physical is the same. Say, I want to be close to God. I want to be spiritual. God is not spiritual. Who says God is spiritual? God is beyond spirituality. What makes spirituality special? Spirituality is not special. Spirituality is special when God creates an avenue within spirituality to connect to Him. But that same God, if the spirituality has nothing to do with God, it's nothing. And if it's physical, like for example, want to hear a weird thing that God says to do? Take a hide of an animal, paint it black. No, he actually doesn't even say to paint it black. Only the straps he says to paint it black. Take a hide of an animal, make it into 4 corners, then take a parchment and write down major Jewish values in it, stick it in it, and then stick it on your hands opposite your heart and on your head opposite your brain in order to influence you with Jewish values. But God chose that this should be your avenue of connection. So there's nothing big or small. If you're saying something is big and small in front of God, you're limiting God. God is beyond big, nor and obviously small. God is beyond big and small is exactly the same. What makes something godly? If God chooses it. So God could choose learning Torah, which is a huge mitzvah, and God could also choose when your wife make the fish on Friday afternoon. Which one is more godliness? The question is not what's big or small. The question is, what does God want? So let's say if now God wants me to help my wife cook on Friday afternoon, or God wants me now to go home and be involved in physicality even. I say, no. And I say, please God, I don't want to be physical. I don't want to be involved in physicality. I don't want to cook fish. What am I a sous chef? I'm a cook. What's going on? I want to stay in shul and I want to learn, meditate, say Tehillim. I want to connect to you. If these things would have independence, I understand you. But if it's God is beyond all this, God chooses it. That is what makes it holy. That is what makes it special. That's what makes it connect to God. So if you say, I want to stay in shul instead of going home and helping or doing something, what am I basically saying? I'm not serving you, God. I just want to be a spiritual person. Which, in parentheses, nowadays the word spiritual is sometimes just the other word for being an emotional basket case. They sometimes people mix up being emotional and being spiritual. No connections. But that's a whole other anti-spirituality rant. We don't want to go into. So you get the idea. You get the idea. So does God care? God doesn't care. God chose to care. God chose to care about me. God chose to care about my benching. God chose to care where I look when I walk down the street. God chose to care how much Torah I learn. Wow, that's real love. That's real love. That's God giving me significance. God giving me the power to affect the world, to affect Him. God chose that I should be able to affect Him. If I could really affect Him because He gets affected by me, He's no God. He's some wimpy one.
What's the atheist arguments is something I've read is that why they it's like they have a guy that's like a Christian with a brochure can you come join us, worship this God who needs worshiping to stay powerful. It's their perspective is that we are praying because God needs us to pray. It's kind of he's such a weak God that
that's what the atheists.
That's what the atheists say. It's their.
And that's
argument.
why in a lot of schools, even in Yerushalayim, a lot of schools outside of Chassidus, I'll tell you, God doesn't need anything. It's all for you. Chassidus, on the other hand, says both extremes. Again, Chassidus fuses the two and says God doesn't need you, but He chose to need you. He says, I want the world to become a dwelling place for me, and I chose to need you to fulfill that mission.
I hope I word this right. It's almost like what you do is ultimately for Hashem, but if you want to for yourself, it has to be through Him. If you want to be in His favor, that's why you do it. You do it for Hashem. So that
Right.
By extension, good things will come to you, and you'll be in His favor. Right? Is that fair to say?
That's a whole other level. That's where it turns into employee-employer relationship. I need the benefits, you need the work, and we exchange.
Yeah.
That's a business deal. That's the Rambam says that is the basis. That is like for the beginning for children. When like that's reward and punishment, which is by the way very rampant in all religions, right?
Right.
You tell people if you do this, you get the good stuff. If you don't do this, you get the bad stuff.
The parent analogy really helped from 2 days back. With the whose daughter didn't become a chiloni.
Yeah. I saw that story had like a strong impact on you.
Yeah.
Why? Share.
Because it's true. It's just like it's like when you give rebuke to someone, or your parent or your father is to rebuke you. It's not like, what are you doing up so late? It's like, you're home now. Okay, I want to show my concern. Like, here's some food. Just recoup. It's like a giving. It's a giving act. It's not selfish.
So rebuke is. You said rebuke is.
Rebuke is like.
Rebuke is criticism.
No, that. I was wondering what was. Oh, I see.
You remember the story I said about the girl that used to come home every night, and the father, instead of rebuking her, he used to ask her, "My daughter, did you have supper?" And he used to wake up in the middle of the night and make her an egg.
Okay, vaguely.
Yeah, it was 2 days ago.
It's all on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I just want to go back to what you said. You brought up a very interesting point, Boaz, and we'll discuss at a different time. There's different levels of connecting, of worshiping God. One is reward punishment, one is a romantic relationship, and the deepest one is just to do God's need. God, so to say, God is, I want to have a dwelling place out here in the world, and we fulfill His mission.
Right.
So everyone is it's a different level of selflessness. But basically, this is going to be our mimer. Our mimer. This is all what we did till now is one long introduction to understand what the mimer is going to say. What? That if you look in the Pasach Eliyahu, what does it say? God, you have brought forth 10 tikkunim, 10 adornments. 10 adornments. Now, what does the Alter Rebbe see in the word adornment? And this is amazing. This will blow you out of the socks. It says the Alter Rebbe like this. If it's something external, like the Maral says, how would we have called it adornments or 10 clothing? Clothing is external, right? In order for me to cover myself, I have to go to the store and get a garment to cover myself. If the Zohar believes like the Rambam, he wouldn't have said that he brought forth 10 Sefirot, because according to the Rambam, God is Chochmah. Says the Alter Rebbe, that's the brilliance of the divine brilliance of the Zohar. What do we say? God, you have brought forth 10 adornments. What does an adornment mean? What is the difference between an adornment and clothing? Adornment is like a jewelry. Let's use an example. Yeah, let's use it, and we call it 10 sapphires. What does an adornment mean? Who could give me a good example of an adornment that says that I have united with something? Clothing comes to cover me. Guys, this is so important to understand this in Chassidus. This is the deep Chassidus. It's Chassidus 501, but it's still, I think we spoke so many deep things that worked so well this week that we could discuss that too. What's the difference between clothing and an adornment? Why do we call thought, speech, and action in the Tanya? I'm stepping back, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm stepping back. In the Tanya, who is the person? The person is the 10 faculties. The 10 faculties then have 3 clothing. What are the 3 clothing? Thought, speech, and action. Why are they called clothing? Because it's not a part of who I am. It's something the way I express myself. I could talk or I could be quiet. I could talk one thing and then talk about something else. If I have even a thought, if I have a bad thought, I could just switch that thought. Right? Like we always quote the name of Rav Nachman that says, God did us a big favor that we can't think more than one thought. You have a depressing thought, just think about something else.
I read a Rebbe letter about that this morning.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What did the Rebbe say?
Well, he said it was response to a guy who's had disturbing thoughts, and he said that's exactly what he said. You can only think one thought at once. So it's probably better to play your thoughts with thoughts of Torah.
Wow, please show it to me inside. I didn't know that the Rebbe says these words that you can only have one thought at once. The Rebbe says these words. I would like to see that. That's brilliant.
I have a whole book. I can read a letter before class every morning.
That's brilliant. Very good. So, but in the Tanya, the person is the 10 faculties, and the clothing is a thought, speech, and action. Over here, Dal Rebbe is going to come and do something very interesting. He's going to say what I wrote in the Tanya, that the person is the 10 faculties. It's not so. I called the 10 faculties the person relative to the clothing. But when you go in deeper, the person's soul, just like with God, is beyond the 10 faculties. So what is the difference between the faculties and clothing? Clothing is not a part of you. Adornments is what you unite with. Let's use one good example of adornment. A woman wearing a ring. Or nowadays, men also wear a ring. What is the ring doing? The ring is over here in order to cover me. It's not in order to cover me. It's in order to express me. You get the difference?
Yeah.
When it comes to cover me, obviously clothing of adornment. For example, like a uniform.
Yeah.
The uniform aspect of it is the adornment part. But when I'm wearing a ring, what am I basically saying? I am a married person. It's a status. When I'm wearing a badge, I'm a policeman. I have united myself with, I'm wearing, let's say, a thing of a lawyer. I went to school for so many years, and I became a lawyer. I'm not covering myself. I am uniting myself with something. Says the Alter Rebbe that that's the meaning of Eliyahu Hanavi when he wants to talk about 10 Sfirot. He doesn't call them garments, and that's why we have to send a letter again to the Kahos publication to change the words tikkunin from garments. It's not garments. Garments is later in the Patach Eliyahu when he talks about the three worlds. He calls them levushim, garments, because the other three worlds, that's already a real concealment. That is the worlds. Bria Yetzira Asiya is the beginning of the creation of the world. That's when, so to say, God invests himself and expresses himself through these things. But when you wear a ring, what is that? It's not in order just to express yourself. It's to reveal you. It's to show a certain status of you. That's something that you don't take off so easily. It's a disgusting joke. I don't know if to say it while being recorded on YouTube. But there's no pause over here. That's the problem. You're going down live. I once saw an advertisement for a divorce lawyer. It says, if you think that money can buy happiness, you never paid a divorce lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a stupid joke. But what is the point? Why am I saying it? I'm saying it if you wear a ring, obviously you could change. The 10 Sfirot are not really the person themselves, but it's hard to change it. Socks, a shirt, thought, speech, and action. You could do it. You could undo it. You could stop. You could change it. You could go from knocking in a hammer to learning Torah. It's not. You don't unite with it. The 10 Sfirot, therefore, are called in the Holy Zohar the 10 adornments. Adornments are not in order to conceal you. Adornments is to show an achievement, something you are united with it. I became a doctor. I am married. I am a lawyer. this says the Alter Rebbe that's why it says tikkunim. In the word tikkunim, the Alter Rebbe found the reconciliation between the Rambam and the Maharal. According to the Maharal, these are just clothing. According to the Rambam, this is not even according to the Rambam, it's God Himself. Says the Alter Rebbe, if you learn the Tanya, you'll think that I am saying just like what am I saying? I'm saying even worse than Rambam. I'm saying that a person is all the 10 faculties. I call God all the 10 faculties. But what I wrote in the Rambam, that the person is his 10 spheres, it's incomplete what it says in Tanya. It's very cool because usually in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe over here writes a mimer saying that what I wrote in the Tanya is incomplete because the Tanya is just a matter of relativity, a matter of relative to the thought, speech, and action, to the levushim. That's chapter 3 versus chapter 4. Chapter 3 talks about the 10 faculties, and chapter 4 talks about the clothing. And the whole idea of the Tanya is to know what you could change, what you can't change, what is the things that you could change easily. That is your thought, speech, and action. You have control over them. That's the whole idea of the Benoni. That in his faculties, he's like an evil person, like a Rasha, and in his clothing, he is like a tzaddik. Right? That's the whole idea of the Tanya. Now I get to tell you the truth. The truth is, your essence is even beyond your faculties. The only difference between faculties and thought, speech, and action is that thought, speech, and action are called clothing. It's a way of covering. It's covering you and you're expressing yourself in that version. Your faculties is what you unite. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I did say right. Why am I sorry? Your faculties is what you unite yourself with. Please, guys, if it doesn't make sense, one of my biggest passions in life is to explain these deepest things in simple English. I think that's the whole idea of Chassidus. Did it make sense what I just said?
I also wake up a little bit.
You have to start using my coffee.
I have a question.
When you had my coffee, you understood everything.
I understood everything, but I crashed like 2 hours later.
Because you did it only one day.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Bitte.
So, I had to look up the Swedish word for adornment to understand more what it means. And
What is the Swedish word for adornment?
it's called prydnad.
I know, prydnad is not that. Is it, yeah? Is it really like prydnad? Yeah?
So what it means, prydnad is something, adornment is something you can fill your home with.
Also, anything you could embellish.
That you express who you are as a person. And somebody comes into your home, you can see all these adornments in your home and they can check. But my thought is, people that enter your home and see your adornments become like a hooker. Why? Because they're seeing the limitations of the adornment that you have in front of you, and they don't see the whole picture.
Right.
And they will just be like, oh,
That's,
like the same guy with the watch.
but that's not. Yeah, but that's not.
Adornment is something that decorates another thing.
Yeah.
Right. It decorates.
Yeah, it's like a tie. It's
like
adornment to a suit.
Exactly. Let me try to explain something. I hear your question. The difference between the choker and the makubal, the difference between the philosopher and the Kabbalist, is not if God has 10 sfirot. The question is if that's where it ends, or you understand that the person was something else and it became that. So let's say you see me wearing a lawyer, how do you call it? A cloak.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you a choker. You understand that I wasn't born a lawyer. I went to school to become a lawyer. That's a difference. The difference is that the philosopher sees the sfirot as the top, because he has no way to going past them, because he gets to know the sfirot from the artifacts down here. So when you start telling him that God is beyond the sfirot, how do you know that? So when I see you, hopefully one day I'll see you wearing it. You wear a talit already? No. So one day I'll see you wearing a talit. I'll say, oh wow, David got married. What a lucky girl. Oh, what a good taste. Huh?
Go on. He's
No,
like,
we're live now. Hey, listen. You have to get a lot of subscribers. Like we just put in a pitch for you. Yeah?
I'll send it to everyone.
Get them to subscribe.
Put it in a shotgun channel.
So what do I understand? I understand that you have now united. You are now a married man, but it doesn't make me a choker. I know that you weren't born married, right? And you worked very hard to be the person that could be married. They say, if you want to get married, be the person you want to marry. So that's not the difference between choker. Both believe in that there's a world of Atzilus. The only question is if Atzilus is the top, or to a certain extent, for God, it's the bottom, because it's going to become the God as we know in the world of Atzilus. But over here is going to be a big difference. According to the Rambam, what is God? God stays in the attribute of wisdom. But if you look in chapter 9 in Tanya, let's open up the chapter 9 in Tanya. Because this is, just take your phones, go in chapter 9 in Shari Chedva Emunah, or open the computer. You could open the computer. And you'll see how the Alter Rebbe says this brilliant idea. Shari Chedva Emunah, the second volume in Tanya.
And 9.
I
What?
don't think Patach Ohr,
What am I searching?
Yeah, go in Tanya, Chabad.org, Tanya. Oh, you can also do that, chapter 9, very good.
Chapter 9 in this part.
Is that?
In regard to the Holy One, blessed is the
Yeah, no, but in the second volume, you're in the first volume.
Wow.
No, Shari Chedva Emunah.
Alright, yeah. Oh.
So what does the Alter Rebbe say in regards to the Holy One? Let's read this together and let's see how the Alter Rebbe says this brilliant idea.
I think I'm on the wrong volume. That's just the about the animal soul.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the quality of
So you just go over here, you go texts by chapter, loading. Why is it still loading?
That's my phone. I'm from Patach Ohr.
It's not your phone. Okay, so just
Where's your phone?
part,
Oh, here we
chapter, this is 3 each, part 2.
You don't want to look. I have here go now. I have Safari now. So click here and then I open.
But this is part 3.
Yeah, but I can navigate from there.
Okay, so let's go part 2. So let's read this together and let's see the unbelievable part. Just go to Chabad.org and you can go part 2.
Part 2, that is to say, wisdom relative to him is.
Exactly. What does the Alter Rebbe talk about the wisdom? Because that's what the Rambam talks about, right? That's what the Rambam says. He and his wisdom are one.
I'm here.
You have it? Very good. So let's read the English, everyone. In regards to the Holy One, blessed be He, however, the quality of wisdom is the beginning of thought and is genesis. To him, the completion of the action. In relation to the Holy One, blessed be He, is considered as if
Who would call it level of action as it is written? You have made them all with wisdom. That is to say, wisdom relative to him is the quality of life.
a second. Maybe it's chapter 8. I messed up. No.
Yeah, that's it.
Chapter 8, there, when one is the blessed memory has said that the Holy One, blessed is its essence being
Oh, I'm sorry. It's 8.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, everyone. Looking for it, and it wasn't even there. Okay, now let's see what we learned this week, and then tomorrow we're going to do it in the Mimer. You're really going to be blown away. But now let's see what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. Now, Let's read it. Let's read. Ah! what a surprise guest over here in this bag.
How are you, everyone?
That's a surprise guest. It's the middle of class. Honey, we're in front of the whole world on YouTube.
And you mentioned my name.
Yeah. We mentioned that we made a pitch for a shidduch for David.
Oh, really? Amazing.
Come, Tybal, come sit a second. So let's read. Now, what my Mondays, guys, let's read. Who wants to read it? Boz, you want to read it?
Yeah.
This is not very professional, but where am I not?
From the top.
Tybal Zest?
Yep. Now what Mayanot of blessed memory has said in the Holy One blessed be He, His essence, being and His knowledge are completely one.
So what does the Alter Rebbe say? The Alter Rebbe quotes over here by Maimonides, and he, his essence and being and his knowledge are completely one, a perfect unity, and not a composite at all. Applies equally. Guys, do you realize this is like you're reading this, but you don't. If you don't know the history behind this, you don't realize the Alter Rebbe dropped a nuke over here. What does he say? This idea of the Rambam saying that God and His knowledge are one, this applies equally to, continue reading, guys, applies equally to all, what's the emphasis over here? To all attributes of the Holy One, blessed be He. What does the Alter Rebbe say over here? The Alter Rebbe says something that the Rambam says, that the morale of Prague is completely like fire and brimstone against. And what does the Alter Rebbe say? That what the Rambam says is true not only about wisdom, it's true about all the attributes of the Holy One, blessed be He. Let's continue. Boaz, please read.
Applies equally to all the attributes of the Holy One blessed be He, and to all His holy names and all the designations which the prophets and sages of blessed memory inscribed to Him, as gracious, beneficent, and the like.
Exactly. All the prophets and sages, they call God gracious, merciful, beneficent. How could you call God names? Like, if you call God names, what are you basically doing? You're limiting Him. You're giving Him, you're attributing an attribute to Him. So, but what do we know? So there's a second. This is also true with respect to His being called wise, as it's written, and He is also wise. And with respect to His will, God desires those who fear Him, and He wishes to do kindness, and He desires the repentance of the wicked, and does not wish their death and wickedness. And your eyes are too pure, behold evil. His will and His wisdom and His attributes of kindness and His mercy, and all the other attributes do not add plurality and composition, God forbid, to His essence and being, but His essence and being and His will and His wisdom and understanding and knowledge and the attribute of kindness, might, mercy, and beauty. Guys, do you realize these are all the sfirot, right?
Yeah.
Wisdom, understanding, knowledge is chokhmah bina das. Chesed, kindness. Might is gvura. Mercy is rachmim. Beauty is teferes, which is composed of His kindness and might. And likewise, with all His, capital H, other holy attributes are all and absolutely perfect unity, which is His very essence and His being. Why? Because God unites Himself with all the other spheres. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Have a meaningful davening. Have a meaningful afternoon. We're going to do volunteering, and then we're going to finish with a supper at the Lavender Residence at 7:30. We have special barbecue. It's going to be a lot of fun today.
For JSP or like everyone?
The whole yeshiva.
Wow.